I want you to think for a second about like the highest compliment you can receive as a leader or a manager or a founder.
Okay.
If you really search your feelings, for a lot of us, it is being told that you are absolutely indispensable.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it undeniably feeds the ego, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Okay.
just that notion that an entire department or, an entire company it would just simply cease to function if you weren't there to steer the ship. We tend to wear that immense pressure like a badge of honor.
Yeah, we really do. It feels
Yeah.
incredibly validating to be needed that much. But today we are going to completely flip that script.
We really are. It's a tough reality check.
It is.
Yeah.
We are looking through this fascinating stack of deal flow postmortems, financial audit notes, and these confidential private equity memos.
Mm-hmm.
And we're doing this to explore a trap that catches, honestly, the hardest working people completely off guard. So our mission for this deep dive is to uncover why being the single most important person in your business might actually be your most devastating liability. We are unpacking the hidden mechanics of key person risk.
Which is, a concept that directly challenges everything that these nose to the grindstone founders inherently believe about their own value.
Right, because the prevailing wisdom is like, working harder makes you more valuable.
Exactly. Working harder, controlling more variables, touching every single project.
Yeah.
You think that makes you invaluable to the market. But when we look at how professional buyers evaluate businesses, that exact behavior transforms what should be a lucrative asset into this massive flashing red flag.
And it's a huge liability.
Right.
So let's ground this in a real-world business case study that we pulled from these buyout memos.
Good idea.
Because on paper, this is like the ultimate entrepreneurial success story, right? We are looking at a specialty distribution company doing $30 million in annual revenue.
Wow. I mean, in the logistics and distribution sector, hitting 30 million, that means you have survived the gauntlet.
You've made it.
Yeah. It requires serious operational volume, a deeply established supply chain, and usually a very robust customer base.
And they had all of that, like fantastic profit margins, fiercely loyal clients, and they had essentially done everything right to position themselves for an exit.
Right.
Because of those pristine metrics, a mid-market private equity fund steps up to the table, ready to buy the company.
Which is, reaching that moment is the culmination of decades of stress.
Oh, absolutely.
When a private equity firm of that size issues a letter of intent, an LOI,
Yeah.
the founder is looking at a life-changing liquidity event.
They're sprinting across the finish line at this point. Yeah, the financial due diligence is completely cleared.
Right.
The legal due diligence is basically wrapped up.
The hardest parts are done.
Exactly. The signed LOI is sitting right there.
And, at that late stage, the psychological shift has already happened for the founder.
Ooh.
Well, the founder is already mentally spending the money. They are looking at real estate, they're considering philanthropy, planning the next chapter of their life.
Oh, right, because they think it's a done deal.
Yeah. Clearing institutional due diligence takes months of grueling, invasive auditing. So if you are, say, 48 hours from the final signature, the deal feels inevitable.
Which makes what happens next so jarring.
Yeah.
Just literally 2 days before the final purchase agreement is scheduled to be executed, the operating partner from the private equity fund is sitting across from the founder.
Right.
And he asks what sounds like a completely routine, almost administrative question. He just says, who runs this company if you leave?
Right. And it is a standard query in any transition roadmap, but the CEO's reaction exposes this fatal misalignment in how founders and buyers view risks.
Yeah, so the CEO actually laughs it off. He leans back and says, hey, I'm not going anywhere. I am staying for at least 3 years to transition everything. We literally wrote my employment contract into the deal.
Oh, man. And that response, it just demonstrates a fundamental misunderstanding of the operating partner's underlying concern.
How so?
Well, the CEO assumes this is a question about his loyalty, right? Or his willingness to stick around and help out.
Right, like, don't worry, I won't abandon you.
Exactly. But institutional buyers are not asking about voluntary retirement. They are probing for structural fragility.
Structural fragility, I like that term. So the operating partner realizes the CEO isn't getting it right.
Right.
So he pivots and administers the classic bus test.
Oh, the bus test.
Yeah. He looks at the CEO and says, okay, I understand you're planning to stay, but what if you step off the curb tomorrow morning and get hit by a bus? What is the succession plan?
And you can just imagine the temperature in the room dropping.
Oh, freezing.
Because a buyer is forcing the founder to mentally remove themselves from the equation and evaluate what is actually left behind.
Right. And there's this heavy silence. The CEO kind of stammers, and finally says, well, my team knows what to do.
Which is never a convincing answer.
No. And a partner follows up with the ultimate kill shot question. He asks, have they ever done it without you?
Ooh.
And the CEO is forced to answer with a single word. No.
Yeah. It is staggering when you think about the financial gravity of that moment.
It really is. The best way I can visualize this is imagine you are purchasing a top-of-the-line, multi-million-dollar sports car.
Okay, I'm with you.
The aerodynamic design is flawless, right? The leather interior is pristine. The tires are track-ready. You have the cashier's check right there in your hand.
Right.
But right before you hand it over, you pop the hood.
Yeah.
And there is absolutely no engine inside.
Wow.
It is literally just a guy sitting in the engine bay, pedaling a bicycle really, really fast.
That analogy perfectly captures the buyer's perspective. I mean, from the outside, the car is moving. $30 million in revenue is undeniable forward momentum.
Exactly.
But buyers are not purchasing past momentum, They are purchasing future capacity.
Right. So for you listening right now, if you haven't sat across the table from an acquisitions team, let's break down the mechanics of that.
Yeah, let's do it.
Why does that one single no bring a massive, financially audited, highly profitable deal to a screeching halt?
It comes down to how private equity firms calculate risk. Spreadsheets and past tax returns, well, they tell the buyer what the company did.
That's a tense, right?
Past tense. But the valuation, all those millions of dollars they are offering, that is based entirely on what the company will do in the future.
Right.
So if the entire operation relies on the continuous presence, the flawless execution, and the perfect health of one single human being, that is not a stable corporate entity.
Because if the guy pedaling the bicycle gets the flu or gets burnt out or actually does get hit by a bus, the car instantly stops.
Instantly. The business immediately shifts in the buyer's mind from a self-sustaining asset to a highly precarious liability.
Wow.
They realize the revenue isn't a product of a well-oiled machine. It is just a byproduct of one person's sheer force of will.
And the private equity firm doesn't just take his word for it, though. They decide to look under the hood themselves.
Right, the management audit.
Exactly. Which leads to the next phase of this breakdown. The PE firm tells the CEO, hey, we need to meet with your entire executive leadership team, but we want you to wait outside.
Oh, that's crucial. Separating the founder from the team is a critical diagnostic tool.
Why is that so important?
Because when a dominant CEO is in the room, they create this reality distortion field.
Oh, sure.
Team members defer to them. They look to them for permission to speak, and they unconsciously shrink. The buyer needs to see if the executive team can actually stand on its own 2 feet without the CEO's gravitational pull holding them upright.
And the discoveries they made behind those closed doors were shocking. Let's walk through the 3 massive red flags that surfaced.
Let's hear them.
So, red flag number 1, the chief financial officer of this $30 million company had never approved a capital expenditure over $10,000 without the CEO's physical signature.
Which is, let's unpack the mechanics of what that actually means for day-to-day operations.
See too?
A CFO of a mid-market company should be autonomously managing cash flow, right? Forecasting and allocating capital based on a mutually agreed upon budget.
That's their whole job.
Right. So if a forklift breaks down in the warehouse and it costs, say, $11,000 to replace, and the CFO cannot authorize that payment without the founder signing off, the company doesn't actually have a chief financial officer.
They just have a highly paid bookkeeper wearing a very fancy title.
Exactly. And functionally, it means every single financial decision, no matter how trivial, forms a bottleneck directly on the CEO's desk.
Wow.
The entire organization is completely paralyzed if the founder happens to be on a plane for 6 hours.
Which naturally bleeds into red flag number 2. Because if the money going out is bottlenecked, the money coming in is just as bad.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah, the private equity team interviews the head of sales, right?
Yeah.
And they discover that this individual had never negotiated a major customer contract alone.
Never. Wow. Connect the dots on what drives $30 million in distribution revenue.
Large contracts, mostly.
It is large-scale, high-stakes contracts. So if the head of sales cannot finalize pricing or agree to terms or close a deal without the CEO swooping in to act as the closer, then the company doesn't have a sales team.
What do they have?
They have a lead generation department.
Wow. So the CEO is the chief financial officer, ain't AD the sole closer.
Basically, yeah.
But wait, I have to push back here for a second.
Okay, go ahead.
Because if you look at the business figures we culturally celebrate, like the Elon Musks, the Steve Jobs, these visionary founders who are famously involved in the absolute minutia of their products,
Sure.
they are synonymous with their brands. So why is key person risk suddenly a deal breaker here, but it's celebrated on the cover of business magazines?
That's a fair question, but it's a vital distinction between a visionary brand asset and an operational bottleneck. So Elon Musk might set the visionary direction for a new vehicle platform, right? But he is not personally signing the $10,000 purchase orders for brake pads at the factory.
Why, that makes sense.
And he's not personally negotiating every fleet sale to a rental car company. The trap our distribution CEO fell into is what organizational psychologists call the illusion of organizational capability.
The illusion of organizational capability. Break down how that illusion works.
Well, the CEO's immense personal talent, their insane work ethic, and their ability to problem solve were basically acting as a smokescreen.
A smokescreen for what?
Because the top-line revenue was growing and the profits were healthy, it created the illusion that the company itself was strong. But the actual organization, the infrastructure, the team, the processes, it had zero independent capability.
Wow.
The CEO was functioning as an exoskeleton for a company that had no internal skeleton of its own.
So when you remove that exoskeleton, the whole thing just collapses into a puddle on the floor.
Exactly. It masquerades as strength, but it is profound structural weakness. Which leads us to the third red flag, and perhaps the most dangerous one of all, regarding how this company actually functioned day to day.
Yeah, red flag number 3, the operations manager didn't even know the pricing logic for their top product line. Yeah, only the CEO held that knowledge.
Think about the complexity of pricing in specialty distribution. I mean, it isn't just picking a number out of thin air.
Not at all.
It involves calculating fluctuating supply chain tariffs, warehousing costs, margin targets, volume discounts, competitor positioning.
It's massive. And if you're listening right now and you run a team, I want you to think about the most critical operational knowledge in your department. Where does it live?
That's the real question.
Right. Because in this case, all of that complex mental math lived exclusively inside the founder's brain.
Which means the company is completely blind and paralyzed the second market conditions change.
Right.
If fuel prices spike or a supplier raises rates, the operations manager has no mathematical framework to adjust the pricing. They just have to wait for the CEO to manually recalculate everything.
So how did they even hit $30 million in revenue with this crazy setup?
Honestly, by the CEO acting as a human router, they were likely working 90-hour weeks, manually overwriting systems, and just absorbing an unsustainable amount of stress.
Jeez.
There was zero documented decision-making process, no emergency authority structure.
So the private equity partner obviously saw right through the smokescreen.
Clearly.
He comes out of that management audit, and his ultimate conclusion is just a brutal gut punch to the founder. The deal dies right there.
Right there on the spot.
The partner tells his firm, and I'm quoting from the deal notes because it is just so definitive, they had a CEO, not a management team. The business was one person. We cannot buy one person.
It is a devastating verdict, but it forces a paradigm shift that every professional really needs to confront.
What's the shift?
It highlights the massive fundamental difference between owning a job and owning an asset.
Okay, let's really explore that. Job versus asset. What is the dividing line there?
Well, an asset is an entity that produces value entirely independently of your daily physical labor.
Okay.
So a dividend-paying stock portfolio is an asset. A commercial building that you lease out is an asset. A business that can acquire customers, execute services, make operational decisions, and generate profit while you are asleep, that is an asset.
But if you have to be in the building every single day, making all the critical decisions just to keep the lights on.
Then you do not have an asset. You have a highly compensated job.
A job. Wow.
And the cold, hard reality of the mergers and acquisitions world is that buyers do not buy jobs.
Yeah.
When a founder tries to sell a business that relies entirely on their own daily intervention, what they're actually trying to do is sell their own job, but attach a valuation multiple to it.
So for listeners who haven't been through an acquisition, let's do a quick explainer on what a valuation multiple actually is.
Good idea.
When a founder says, my company makes $5 million a year in profit, so I want a multiple of 6, making it worth $30 million, what is that buyer actually paying for?
Right. So the buyer is essentially buying a time machine. They are paying cash up front today for guaranteed future years of profit.
Got it.
So a multiple of 6 means they believe the company's current cash flow is stable enough to reliably produce that profit for the next 6 years without any major disruption.
But the buyer looks at our distribution company and realizes without the CEO there to pedal the bicycle, the company makes zero profit next year.
Exactly. So the multiple they are willing to pay drops to 0.
Zero. Wow.
Yeah. Private equity firms view key person risk as an unacceptable gamble. They aren't just worried about the CEO deciding to quit in 6 months,
Right.
They view it as a literal wager on one human being's biological health, their mental stamina to keep working 90-hour weeks, and their undivided emotional loyalty.
That sounds incredibly risky.
It is. That is not a sound investment strategy for an institutional fund. That is literally walking into a casino and putting $30 million on red.
And professional buyers don't gamble.
No, they don't.
So the private equity fund packs up their briefcases, they politely shake hands, and they walk away. The deal evaporates.
Ouch.
I want you to put yourself in the shoes of this founder for a minute. Try to fathom the psychological whiplash of that weekend.
The whiplash would just be agonizing.
Stun doesn't even begin to cover it. I mean, this is a person who played the game and thought they had won.
Yeah.
They built an incredibly profitable, high-revenue business. They survived the grueling financial audits. They had the signed letter of intent. They had practically picked out the color of the boat they were going to buy.
They firmly believed they had reached the absolute summit of your career.
And instead, Monday morning rolls around. The founder has to wake up, put their suit back on, drive the exact same commute, and walk right back into the office to run a company they thought they were leaving.
Oh,
They are
no.
completely, utterly trapped.
Trapped with the absolute agonizing certainty that their life's work is currently unsellable.
The sting of that realization is immense. And think about the colossal cost of that single failed audit.
It's huge.
We aren't just talking about a bruised ego here. We are talking about tens of millions of dollars lost. The entire exit strategy, the liquidity event that was supposed to secure their family's generational wealth, it is just gone like smoke in the wind.
And beyond the financial devastation, consider the immense isolating personal stress.
Oh, the stress must be unbearable.
Before the private equity firm came in, that founder probably thought they were invincible. They loved being the hero. But now...
Now they know the truth.
Exactly. Every single day they walk into that building, they know that the entire company's survival, the mortgages of all their employees, their own retirement, it all balances precariously on their shoulders alone. There is absolutely no safety net underneath them.
If they burn out, the entire ecosystem burns down. If they take their eye off the ball for a month, the engine seizes. The sheer weight of that must be suffocating. They realize they didn't build a machine that works for them. They built a high-speed treadmill.
A treadmill they can't get off.
Right. And it's going faster and faster, and they can never, ever step off.
It forces a massive reevaluation of the metrics we culturally use to measure success.
How so?
Well, we constantly celebrate top-line revenue, we celebrate widening profit margins, we celebrate massive headcounts.
Sure, all the time.
But we almost never celebrate redundancy. We rarely celebrate a leader's ability to render themselves entirely unnecessary to the daily operation.
Which brings this entirely back to you listening to this deep dive right now, because this isn't just a cautionary tale about some anonymous CEO who lost a $30 million deal.
No, it's not.
This story is a mirror. Think about your own ecosystem. How many business owners, how many department directors, how many project leads are walking around right now bragging about their metrics, completely unaware that they are entirely unsellable?
It is a universal vulnerability. And, even if you have absolutely no intention of selling a company, this trap still applies to you.
That's a great point.
If you want to earn a promotion, if you want to take a 6-month sabbatical, or if you just want to take a 2-week vacation with your family without secretly checking your phone under the dinner table, you are facing key person risk.
Right, because if you are the only one who knows how to execute your current role, the company literally cannot afford to promote you. You become a prisoner of your own exceptional competence.
Exactly. So I will leave you with a final provocative thought to really mull over today.
Let's hear it.
Take a hard, objective look at your professional world. Is your business, your specific department, or your current project just one person away from falling apart? Are you truly building a resilient asset that can survive without you? Or are you just building yourself a very, very demanding job?
That is the ultimate question.
Yeah.
Asset or demanding job?
Yeah.
And the tricky thing is, the first step isn't trying to blindly guess where your vulnerabilities are.
No, guessing won't help.
You need to know exactly where you stand before a buyer, an investor, or a board of directors ever asks you that bus test question.
You need an unflinching, objective measurement of your structural reality.
Which is why the essential next step here is utilizing the Business Transition Risk Diagnostic. It is a tool designed to evaluate your leadership dependency, probe your decision authority, and measure your knowledge transfer. It shows you exactly if your business can actually survive without its CEO. Visit successionstrength.com or email info@successionstrength.com to measure your key person risk. Follow the Transfer Ready by Succession Strength podcast.